30,000 feet above the cold gray waters of the North Sea. The wind screamed through the open waist window of a B-17 Flying Fortress, the metal of the .50 caliber. Browning pressed icy against the gunner's cheek as he tracked a Messerschmitt Bf to 109 darting through the bomber formation. Just 200 yards out, his breath fogged the gun sight. His gloved fingers trembled not from fear but from what he was about to do. Every instinct told him to center the reticle on the German fighter and pull the trigger. But he didn't. He aimed 6 aircraft lengths behind. The trigger squeezed. Twin barrels thundered. 2 seconds later, the fighter erupted into a burst of fire and falling metal. The formation radio crackled. "Nice shooting, kid. How the hell did you know to aim there?" The gunner just smiled. "Training," he said. In that instant, he had proven something that defied common sense. When firing from a moving aircraft at another moving aircraft, aiming at the enemy meant missing every time. The secret to survival was aiming where the enemy had been. That discovery wasn't luck, it was science. It was the result of years of training, physics, and experimentation born not in Europe's skies but in the barren desert outside Las Vegas, Nevada. Colonel Martinez Steneth stepped out of his car into 60 square miles of absolute nothing sand, scrub, and whined. "You're telling me this is going to be the Army's great gunnery school?" An engineer asked. Steneth nodded. "It'll be more than that. It'll save lives." America had a terrifying problem. It had no standardized way to train aerial gunners, not a single curriculum, no manuals, no tested techniques to teach farm boys how to fire from a moving aircraft at a target moving hundreds of miles per hour. Without them, the entire strategic bombing plan would collapse. The British had already learned this in blood there. Untrained gunners were slaughtered by German fighters over Europe. The Americans refused to repeat the mistake. By March, construction crews arrived. Barracks, classrooms, and firing ranges rose from the dust. By June, over 100 instructors gathered, pilots, physicists, and marksmen, all facing one monumental challenge: teaching a skill no one truly understood. 2 days after Pearl Harbor, the base received its first urgent order: activate immediately. America was at war, and it needed gunners fast. The first trainees arrived before Christmas. They began humbly with shotguns and clay pigeons. "Lead the target," instructors shouted. But when they mounted those shotguns on the backs of moving trucks, everything fell apart. Clay pigeons sailed through the sky untouched. Confusion spread. "Why are we missing?" a trainee yelled. The answer would come from an unlikely source: a Texan sergeant with a love for physics. Sergeant Robert Hayes faced a row of frustrated recruits. He picked up a piece of chalk and drew 3 lines on the blackboard: a bomber flying at 300 miles per hour, a fighter approaching from the side, and a bullet's path. "You think the bullet flies straight," Hayes said, turning to the men. "It doesn't. It carries the bomber's speed with it." He tied a string to a weight and began walking forward as it swung. "This is your bullet. See how it doesn't fall straight? That's what your shot does. It curves forward with your plane." "So we aim ahead?" one student asked. "No," Hayes replied. "You aim behind. The faster you move, the further behind you aim." It was completely counterintuitive, and yet it worked. This concept became known as position firing, predicting where the bullet and fighter would meet in space, not where the fighter appeared. Charts filled the classrooms. Trainees memorized deflection, angles that showed exactly how many aircraft lengths to aim behind, sometimes as many as 12. It sounded insane, but when tested on the range, the bullets found their marks. By summer 1942, the Las Vegas school was producing 600 new gunners every 5 weeks. Week by week, raw recruits transformed into calculating marksmen, learning that in aerial combat, instinct was the enemy and math was salvation. August 17, 1943, 376 B-17 bombers thundered toward Germany targets, Regensburg and Schweinfurt. The Luftwaffe responded with over 400 fighters. The sky turned into chaos: black flak bursts, streaking tracers, spiraling smoke. Waist gunners clung to their .50 cals, relying entirely on the training drilled into them in Nevada. "Lead 6 lengths behind," one yelled. "Trust your charts," another reminded. Those who followed instinct, aiming straight at their attackers, missed. Those who followed the math watched German fighters explode midair. By the battle's end, the Americans lost 60 bombers, a staggering 20%, but shot down 27 enemy planes. It stunned both sides. For the first time, mathematics had beaten instinct. But combat demanded even more. As losses mounted, technology evolved. Late in 1943, British engineers introduced the Mark II gyro gunsight, a spinning gyro device that automatically calculated deflection. The Americans quickly adopted it, creating the K-1 for sight. Now, gunners didn't need to think in angles or tables. The sight's moving reticle showed exactly where to aim. Keep the target inside the ring, pull the trigger and watch it fall. Accuracy doubled overnight. The era of calculated killing had truly begun. By mid-1944, gunnery training had become a science. But instructors knew simulators could only go so far. So they launched Operation Pinball, a revolutionary program where trainees fired at real, maneuvering aircraft. At Las Vegas, armored Bell RP-63 King Cobras were painted bright orange and fitted with sensors that lit up when struck by special frangible bullets. "Alright, boys," an instructor grinned. "Time to shoot at something that shoots back." The first runs were chaos. Students missed wildly, panicked under pressure. But as weeks passed, confidence grew. The realism was unmatched, accuracy improved by 40%. Meanwhile, new gunnery schools opened across the US, 7 in total. By early 1945, over 200,000 men had graduated. The next leap came with the B-29 Superfortress. Its gunners operated remote-controlled turrets, linked to analog computers that calculated deflection automatically. Sitting inside pressurized compartments, they aimed through periscopic sights as the system adjusted every bullet's trajectory. Against fast Japanese fighters, it was devastatingly effective. It was the final evolution of the principle. Born in the Nevada desert, that instinct could never outguess physics. By war's end, over 214,000 men had graduated from America's gunnery schools, 44,000 from Las Vegas alone. The young men who once fumbled with shotguns in the desert had become the defenders of the skies. Their survival depended not on courage alone but on discipline, on the ability to trust equations over emotion. "Aim where he was, not where he is," instructors had said, and thousands lived because they obeyed. The lesson didn't die with the war. In Korea, B-29 gunners used the same deflection principles against Soviet-built MiG-15s. Today's fighter pilots, aided by digital computers, still follow that same law of motion. The old Las Vegas airfield is now Nellis Air Force Base, home of the U.S. Air Force Weapons School and the Thunderbirds. The desert ranges where those first students once rode trucks, firing at targets, are gone, but their principle endures. When you're moving, don't aim where the target is. Aim where it was. It's more than a rule of physics, it's a philosophy of survival, of learning to let go of instinct and trust reason. In chaos, those gunners proved that what feels wrong can save your life. They aimed behind, and because of that, they came home.